and for many of you in this room here. This is really a reflection of the historical evolution of the digital crime unit within the Civil Guard. Some people in this room have moved from peculiar relationships to even more peculiar relationships, and I have to say that I'm a bit smarter. They never caught me red-handed, but anyway, here we have the round table. So Luis, Pepe, if you could give us a basic introduction. Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here again, collaborating with Rooted.com. How many of you have seen the award ceremony for the Oscars? Well, you saw that the start of the ceremony was quite unusual, with a singer called Justin Timberlake that got into the room singing. We are in another major event today. We don't have Justin Timberlake, but we will now welcome the Internet Crime Unit from the Civil Guard. So a round of applause for all of them. They must get out through there. Well, we can correct mistakes if we make them. Don't worry about it. How many of you have ever been arrested? That makes 4 of you. A round of applause, please. Hello, Juan Antonio. A pleasure to see you here again. Well, a pleasure to have you all here. As my colleague and friend was saying before, it is a pleasure to be with all of you. We are honored to have the professionals who are at the leading edge in this Internet Crime Department from the Civil Guard. Juan Salom couldn't make it because he's doing something else somewhere else. He's meeting important authorities today, the Ministry of the Interior. Anselmo, how long was it since we saw each other for the last time? You were the first. How was this created to start with? I mean, how do you envisage the creation of this unit in the Civil Guard? Well, funny enough, this was back in 1996. The first operation took place in that year. The group itself was created formally a year after that. Many things start very simply. I was assigned at the Central Operating Unit. I was working with homicides and kidnappings, but I had done a course for 18 months in IT analysis. And I was just walking down the corridor when my boss saw me and he said, come in. You know a little bit about IT, yes? Well, I've done this course. Well, get a team together, because there's been a report from the province of Tarragona and an authorized access to the Rovira Virgili University, and we would need you to go there, find out as much as you can, and see what we can do. That was, as I say, back 96, and that was a start. So we got there to Tarragona. We assembled a small team, 4 members of the Civil Guard altogether, with basic training in IT, and with help from the witnesses and from the people that reported this to us. We were able to start everything at that time. IT crime was not clearly specified in our penal code, so it was quite an adventure at that time. I came from another area, as I say, homicides and kidnappings. So there was an amazing number of headlines that were generated because of the inception, the creation of this group. So that was 1996. And then formally speaking, as a group, well, it took off 1 year after that. He's Lieutenant Colonel Anselmo del Moral, by the way. At that time, did we have any other teams in Spain with similar tasks? Well, the national police have started doing things in that area. They don't really have a central unit in charge of this, but they had started working on this more or less around the same time. It is true that the first things they did, or the first reports they got, had to do with intellectual property. But together with Carlos Garcia, my counterpart in the National Police, with whom we've had a very reasonable relationship, well, I think we got on to the same type of work simultaneously, more or less. The big boom then came along in the 90s, and we were created at the same time, more or less. Civil Guard and National Police. The person in charge is Juan Antonio Rodriguez. You see what differences there are between the the preliminary organization of the group at that time. He was my first lieutenant. He was the first officer getting to the group. I feel very proud to have participated or to have contributed to that experience. It was 4 of us. It's almost 40 now. And he was also one of the first ones getting into that adventure. Quite excited at first, and I feel really proud of sitting next to him, and I'm glad to see that he continued with that experience. And Major Oscar de la Cruz and Major Cesar Lorenzo. No, I was not there. I left before they got to that group at that time. Then it was Juan that replaced you, Juan Salom. I think Juan was there, one way or another. Juan and Cesar? No, it was Juan. So, with a historical perspective, what differences could you mention between the time when Anselmo joined and the time when Juan joined? Well, good evening. We were talking a few minutes ago about the people that are still working at our department. 4 people from that initial group. In August of 1998, that's when I joined. I stayed there until 2003. As an anecdote, some of those still working for the department, when they had to cater for a report, the civil guard would use a desktop computer. They would fly to the Canary Islands to take the report. We didn't have any resources, or not enough resources, to face this type of crimes. How many? That's 35. We're about to be 38. We've grown with 10 new recruits. I mean, training 10 people in an environment as specialized as this one is not an easy task. We cannot allow for them to put their foot on the brake pedal, because crime is very technical, crime is very sophisticated, so we need to move really quickly. Once we get a report from a citizen, our work is about collecting evidence, enough evidence to reconstruct the facts and find out who is behind the scenes. collecting evidence today in IT is extremely complicated. I remember when we started, it was quite funny because most servers were Unix. I remember the bash history that we would get. A lot of people would make the mistake not to delete it, or they would leave it in the RAM memory. So we would get the last commands in that list. And that was the type of evidence that we could collect back then. And then there was perhaps 1-2 countries we usually focused on. Nowadays, we really need collaboration from other police forces. We really need to work hand in hand if we want to get enough evidence or preserve the necessary evidence to make a case. I mean, if something happens in the Dominican Republic, we really should have the opportunity to collaborate at all levels, because there might be a report on a crime that was committed there, affecting someone over here. So there are connections between banks and different countries. If we go to the judge in Spain, well, judges in the past, I remember when I started with Anselmo, one of the things that I used to do as a young officer, a trainee really, I would do a drawing for the judge to understand what the report was about. I mean, the senior officers didn't understand anything, but the judge had to determine what to do. And in order for the judge to understand the facts, well, we needed to do the basics. We needed to show the judge everything graphically. Without a graph, it was basically impossible to make them understand. We now yield the floor to Oscar. When you were in charge of the group, what was your main challenge? Well, that was GDT 3.0, so to say. We saw the emergence of organized cybercrime. Before that, yes, we saw things, but they were on a one-off basis. But in recent years, we've seen a much more organized type of crime. All sorts of fraud, all sorts of cons. The first time we detected ransomware, it would block your computer at that time. That was 2011. That was the business model that was adopted by different gangs throughout the world. We're now seeing fraud involving millions in many situations in highly organized structures. So you will see some phishing cases, relatively easy to detect. There's Nigerian letters, fraud in online shops, things that were more or less simple, but we've seen an exponential increase in the degree of complexity. I mean, these guys invest everything. They invest their time, their money, to make easy money by committing fraud. So we now yield the floor to Cesar. Cesar, we will not ask you about the best boss you ever had, because that would be a bit embarrassing. But anyway, could you tell us how you measure the success of your work? Well, that's a complicated answer. Well, you obviously have the statistics about crimes, number of people arrested and all that, but that's just cold numbers, cold figures. I remember with Juan, when he said, have very few arrested people. Well, we can go up to 1,000 if we make the machine move, but this is just cold figures. I measure it based on our capacity to innovate. We have new investigations every day, and each individual investigation has its own challenges, and our main success is based on being able to overcome things. Obviously, we've seen ourselves in situations with new systems that we don't know of, but being able to learn about the operation, how fraud was committed, how the crime was committed, that gives me peace of mind. I didn't know how to do this, but I've spent 2-3 months and I managed to learn. So it's being able to innovate and overcome. But then the cold figures, that's just not enough. Well, one of the parameters to measure success is number of people arrested. We've asked around, before you were here, how many people were arrested in this room, not by you, okay? I think we saw 4 hands. Okay, could you raise your hands? Could we count those hands again? They don't. They don't want to raise their hand now. Well, we have a list with us. We will interact with them. Anyway, my question to you first. What does it take to be one of you? Willingness? What does it take? Well, let me tell you one thing. I mean, you asked me the question before, how things have evolved. Cybercrime, how has it evolved? To your question, I would say that in order to fight against cybercrime, before we alone would look for someone that would train us. But nowadays, companies and the world of cybersecurity is part of our struggle, of our fight against cybercrime. Today, we have to count on you. Otherwise, cybercrime, we couldn't battle with cybercrime. We really need to rely on the community, on the community around cybersecurity. It is not just our responsibility because there's so much we can do. We cannot be everywhere. I was reading a recent paper about challenges in the States regarding President Trump, fake news, cybersecurity in general, and then Obama's legacy. The Americans were saying in that paper that they haven't found the way. You know about the basic concept, public-private collaboration. The Americans have realized that they haven't been able to make it effective enough, collaboration between the public and the private sectors, because knowledge, technology, experience lie with the private companies. It is not government. We move based on reports from victims of an attack or victims of an incident. Knowing about the technology that has been used is above us. We really need to have others on board. We really need you, from the world of cybersecurity, actively participating in everything we do. I'd like to hear from you, what is your definition of a hacker? What is a hacker now? What is a hacker? Well, during my time, I'm not so sure about being able to answer that question, because back in my time, when that question was posed to me more than 20 years ago, this is really an anecdote to illustrate how you can make a mistake. I just said that people arrested, alleged hackers, because of unauthorized access to a system, were brilliant people because of what they did. They were brilliant. But in terms of human interaction, sometimes they would get blocked. Do you want to drink? Do you want something to eat? There was so much into the world, there was so much inward looking that they found it very difficult to interact. It's like meeting someone who is autistic. And then suddenly we had the headlines. The guy in charge said that we are all autistic. Did you say that? Did you say that hackers are autistic? No, that's not what I meant. I said that sometimes they find it so difficult to interact, and then the big bosses came along. Why did you say that? Why did you say that? Why did you use that word? To me, hacker, well, there's a wide definition and a strict definition. In a wider sense, this is a person that can see beyond what other mortals can see. A way to solve a problem which is different, a way to use a device which is different. In that wider sense, we ourselves have to be hackers, because we have limited resources, we have limited personnel, and we cannot break the law, as you can imagine, so we need to make do with those resources. So that's the wider definition. It would be someone that is able to find vulnerabilities when no one else is capable of finding them. That's another thing that has changed as well. Back then, we would hit the headlines for certain reasons. But now, when we arrest people and we when we do a press release, The people we arrest are cyber criminals. That has changed. That word has now become mainstream. As he says, hackers are people that come along, the friends we have in your world, because if we are devoted to this subject, it's because we like it. Well, these are our friends, our pals that could go to the surgery and see the doctor, see that the Wi-Fi was open, that they could see clinical records for all patients, and come to us and say, wouldn't you be able to do something? So in that case, we get in touch with the company or the institution. So as people that have a curiosity, they really want to know about the nitty-gritty of machines and devices. And Selma was telling us a few minutes ago, the media, you have to educate them. You really have to make them understand what this is all about. Educate them in this field. But it is true that we do have a word now to differentiate between a hacker, who is people that like doing gadgets, and cyber criminals. Anything else? Well, it's not easy. It's being able to have a crazy idea and unable to translate it into a practical application, something that came to your brain and not to anyone else's brain. I'll do my best to make the telephone do this or do that. And then you try one way, you try another way, and you make it work. But this is a long debate, okay? This is a recurrent debate. Could you please tell us about any virtues that you have to have? Something that keeps you apart. Is it green talent? Or talent in green? Something that is special, something that makes you unique. Something that you share between you that allows you to be more successful. Well, the Civil Guard is an institution that was founded in 1844. Since then, it has never stopped working. We are an institution devoted to servicing citizens. Since the first day you join the Civil Guard, you are trained to deliver. You are educated to deliver. That's the essence of our success. Helping citizens, aiding citizens that have been subject to crimes in new technologies. Well, what you are mentioning is quite interesting. I guess that you must have had pleasant and not so pleasant times when you had doubts. Differentiating between a hacker and a cyber criminal. In some instances, I'm sure that was impossible. I'm sure that you must have had difficult experiences with the community. Well, I would add what Juan said before. An important value in our group, something that we have been able to preserve, is teamwork in a professional way. Teamwork. I always say this, when there is a good team on board, work is successful by itself. And then this is about working with a neutral stance. Well, we cannot, a doctor can get involved, emotionally involved with what he's doing, but and we have had sandwiches with people we have arrested. We've told them jokes. Sometimes they leave our premises giving us a hug. So you can be working, but you can have the human touch. We're talking about a world where crime is soft, so to say. There's something similar with more severe instances of crime. If you arrest a killer, you need to treat them humanely. Gather information to verify whether the crime was committed in the first place, and that's it. Sometimes it is not easy, but if you want to be professional, you must do your best. No, allow me to insist, okay? I'm sorry I'm putting my finger to the wound. Have you ever had any situation where you had serious doubts about whether someone was helping you or not, or whether they were helping you and they were committing a crime at the same time? What do you do? Well, it's complicated. I understand that from a human standpoint you cannot speak openly because you are wearing a uniform. Well, I've had all sorts of things. You reach the conclusion that they are responsible. You don't have the evidence. Well, you know it was them. So you feel, this time round I didn't get you, but next time round I will. And we've seen situations, well, some of them have hit the headlines, where, I mean, the things in justice are not always in black and white. And Lieutenant Moral was saying that before. Explaining things to a judge is sometimes very difficult. So we've had experiences in that sense. When you feel that this shouldn't happen, we'll have to see how we resolve this issue in the future. Sometimes you fix the problem, sometimes there's no way. I have had experiences, tough experiences in that sense. So it varies. They may win, but then they may lose. I wanted to ask you, how do you think you're perceived by those people over there in this room? Not by common ordinary citizens, but by them. Well, I'm sure they will be willing to ask questions at the end. I think we can be reasonably proud talking about ordinary citizens, because they're citizens as well. I'm not sure we can say this. It hasn't always been the case, but in the last 5 years, the Civil Guard is one of the institutions with the highest score in the polls. So it varies for different people, of course, but the way we treat people is part of our DNA since 1844. Dealing with people in a humane way, a vocation for public service. And sometimes when you arrest someone, when you see that someone is engaged, is involved in a legal procedure, well, you have to accept that you are public enemy number one. That's beyond your control. But I think that we in the group, and that philosophy is still there, is trying to do things with a neutral stance, in the most professional manner, and in a dependable way. That usually gives you the acknowledgement from the victim and from whoever is involved. You can do an investigation that might not lead you to enough evidence to have someone involved in a legal procedure formally.
So in general, we are perceived positively. We have made an effort to reach out to people so that people trust us in terms of collaboration. We have worked hard to come close to people so that they don't see that we are on the opposite side. And I'm not going to name the endless number of conferences we have participated. So as I say, they know that we are playing our role, and even if we are friends, they know that those who do it wrongly will be prosecuted for that. So of course none of the people here would think that because we are friends, nothing will happen. And our operational unit is a clear evidence that we are not taking sides with anyone, and that is the guarantee. That's the guarantee that we deliver to citizens. So let me say something. Well, because I'm a bit old, I want to say it before I forget it. So regarding cyber crimes or in the cyber environment. What about distribution of geographical scope? So whenever something goes wrong, who should we call? Well, in terms of cyber, there is no demarcation, there are no limits or no borders. So in this country, so citizens can choose the police force they want to report the issue. So we are talking, well, the competent authority is the judicial authority. The only thing that we do is just to take we do the reporting. So we make a register and we gather the evidence that would help the case, and we have the support of the attorney, and then we send that out to the judicial authority. The judicial authority will decide whether they want the civil court to go ahead with the investigation, or the national police force. But it is the citizen who decides whether they want to report the issue or to whom. Well, the law for law enforcement forces establishes, they say that the civil guards say that they are responsible for patrolling the streets and in capital cities and in large places and large cities, and the civil guards, they are responsible for the security in these areas. Therefore, that means 80% of national territory and 40% of the population. That changes also depending on holiday times. That's what the law says. But the law says that for criminal proceedings, for criminal investigation, there is no demarcation, there are no limits. In theory, civil guards should be ready or prepared to receive citizens that want to report an issue. Those who start the reporting are responsible for, and they have to send that information to the attorney. So both the National Police Force and the civil guards have developed or adapted the structures just to respond or to abide by the law. So in these fields of cyber crime, the first judge we refer to should not be necessarily the competent judge. For instance, minor sexual abuse. When we sent out the report, so we need to have mandates to obtain IP addresses, etc. Once the judge has that evidence, and for instance, if we did that in Madrid, because that was reported in Madrid, then the judge may do two things. He either continues with the investigation and arrest people, but when the person are arrested, then the courts in of the place where the arrested person lives is who they finish the investigation. So this is an added complication, but this is also good because that's why we have the IT criminal attorney office that gives us the support so that we can speed up this investigation. So it is very difficult to explain to a judge or sometimes even to my boss. The other day I met with my boss and I told him that there are two policemen from the UK Civil Police Division because on Christmas time we removed 3 command and control panels in the province of the Budna Emirai, and because they hacked the DNS, and my boss says, what are you telling me about? So the same goes for a judge. So we need the support of the attorney office in that regard. Well, in that regard, Doña Elvira, Mrs. Elvira continues to be there. She has not been removed from her position, and it is very good to have her there because she's got long experience. So in general, we have the feeling that cybercrime, the good side of it? Are they closer and closer, or perhaps they are becoming further away from each other? So here I would like you, do you feel comfortably supported by justice system and the pace at which it moves? So I always said that cyber terrorism is highly asymmetrical. The capacity of an attacker to cause damage or produce an attack is significant. It's very significant. Also, immediacy. They may pivot in very many computers across the world. And our criminal proceedings and investigations may take us months. So trying to be at the same level is just very, very complicated. We are working on it. Okay, we are just working to improve legislation, but the pace and the rhythm at which we move is dramatically different from that of the cybercrime. Do you think that cybercrime has increased 100%? This is as much as you have increased. You have shifted from 2 to 40. So what is your opinion about justice, legislation, speed at which it moves? Considering what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, we are gaining ground, we are improving, so cybercrime is much faster. So there is always a gap between the evil guys and technology and regulations, and this is just cannot be stopped. And technology moves really, really fast. Legislation doesn't move as fast. So we cannot really catch up. Whenever we want to regulate an issue and we want to improve the regulation that we have when that is approved, sometimes it is too late. We have new threats coming in. This is an endless race. When I look back, when I started in 2007, I can say that we are doing much better now. What about society? Do they perceive a better awareness on this topic or not? The average citizen, those citizens who are here, well, even if they hear things about minor abuse or spying on German Prime Minister. So these different aspects of cybercrime, is all that contributing to it? So meaning that your people above you are more aware of it, and perhaps as a result of that give you more budget, more competencies. I'm strongly convinced that the internet is a revolution, it's a breakthrough that is having an impact on society, on the administration, on everyone. And this is the living proof of it. So 20 years ago, we started to work on this matter. There were 4 of us, and now there are more than 40, centrally speaking, and many more across Spain. So judges are now more specialized than before. And actually, we are lagging behind because this is a revolution, and it is very difficult to stay ahead of revolutions or to catch up. So an attack that was registered in a log file, it took 10 seconds. So they tried to steal passwords in a server in the US. The National Regulatory Commission took a year to gain access to resolve the issue. So 10 seconds attack, 1 year before it was resolved. So we are improving all the time. However, we are talking about two different orders of magnitude. And I believe that society is becoming aware, very much aware of the changes that we're making. So as the audience is preparing their questions, so please name 3 operations that you are proud of. I'm sure that all of them are really good, but probably 2 or 3 are really, really outstanding for you. Well, there are very many of them, and as Roman said, Millennium, that was important, as well as Hispa hack. Also, we reached a milestone when we implemented Hispalis for vigilance of peer-to-peer networks. for the exchange of child pornography. There was no surveillance on those networks before. Another operation, Mariposa, which is an important botnet network, international in scope. There have been very many relevant operations. Oscar, would you like to add anything? Well, so within the scope of cybercrime, some operations deliver technological rewards, and Anonymous was an international operation. There was a person who was making the attacks from Tor, and that was highly satisfying. However, what we do in terms of protecting minors, satisfaction is different. Perhaps the operations are not as complex, but considering the results and the benefits, they are more morally satisfying. Well, you self-censored yourselves a lot. You are not giving us any details. So I'm sure that you also have good and nice operations underway. Could you please tell us a bit more, just add a bit of color? So you are silent. But do you have any operations on the way, any interesting operations on the way? Are they all specific for your group? Or sometimes you are supporting other areas of the UCO? Well, now that I'm the head of the UCO, I could tell you more about it. We deal with our own operations, but it is true to say that technologies are cross-sectional in life. So we all know that. In the past years, we offered support. For instance, the disappearance of Diana Kerr. We had to support the people of the UCO because Diana had a very active life on social media. So the classic investigation whenever there is a homicide or a missing person is the following. The investigation teams start to talk to everyone. They go and find people in the area, ask everyone to see whether someone has seen something, this and that, just to gather clues here and there and to build a hypothesis. However, in the case of Diana, she used to interact through social media with other people. So therefore, we had to collaborate with them and to send out one of our agents to support them. And for instance, to know how to ask query to Google, asking Google for the information that she had in her social media profiles on Instagram. And not only that, once all that information was gathered, that information had to be analyzed, and then the data that were relevant for the police forces were also screened, and also to give meaning to it, to see. And then we are also working with another missing person that has been that disappeared in Badajoz. We are also supporting them because, well, the technologies that these missing people use deliver new evidence and open up new lines of investigation. So technologies nowadays are just essential, are just critical. Knowing how to investigate that, gather information, and to interpret that information from the operations investigation side is not easy, and you really need skilled people to do that for you. So we are very well of that. So if the UCL has a need, we fully support them. Well, I guess that you have lots of staff working with you, and you have more and more people working in your departments. Yes, we are aware of it. Some of the operations had to be slowed down because we were supporting other units. However, other operations are urgent because they are urgently demanded by society. If we have to stop up a group and to support the UCO in the investigation of Diana Kerr, we do it. And recently, we've only been working a lot in training colleagues. So because we are having more and more demands in these regards, now we are training our colleagues so that they learn little by little and they take care of the most basic stuff. So Cesar, he's more into technology, and in this case, he has trained pairs or couples of investigators at the UCO so that they can take care of the FESTO activities, dumping information, gathering electronic evidence. It is complicated, we know, but it is also part of our job. So we are facing the last stretch of our panel before we give the floor to the audience, and I would like to have your viewpoints, the viewpoints of each of you. What positive suggestion would you like to make so that they are better hackers? No, they are already good hackers. Well, coming to ROOTEDCon and not to lose the curiosity. And then wondering what happens if I do this and this and that and change that, what happens? They should not lose out any of their curiosity. I think I would like to approach this from a more practical manner. My limit, or the limit of what I can do and I cannot do, is in the respect to the other person. I'm not going to do what I would like my others to do to my company. So the limit is respect for the other person. And when you make a decision in life, in general, not only here, we have to think about the consequences. What would happen if I am impacted or affected by the situation? What would happen if I were on the other side? So this is the moral limit on top of the legal moral limit. So collateral talent. So you know that very well, because that's what you do. You are all the time trying to find out and investigate and find out what has happened. Please give us a piece of advice on that. But I can see, I insist on what I said before. I've always seen it like that. That is, the person who commits a crime due to recklessness or whenever there is an intention, which is negligence, means I did this, I didn't want to do this, but I did it. I didn't mean to do it, but I did it. But intent, I am going to damage that because I want to damage it. And then there is a difference between that and someone saying, "Whoa, that window is open, let me warn you about that." However, when this person takes care of the security of a company and warns about the doors or windows that are open, at the end of the day, when they lack on the other side, that person doesn't like to hear, "Look, your door is open." So to me, there is no piece of advice. The piece of advice is that offenders have to be very careful because they may be prosecuted for what they do. Those who push the limits, I would advise them to be very careful and to think that sometimes that may happen to him sometime. By the time they will have a family, they will live on that, and at a given point in time, they may ending up losing their jobs or whatever, just to advocate for someone else's or to defend someone else's different interests. And I very much share what they have just said and what Anselmo has just said. Those who are offenders and they do want to cause harm. So, well, the piece of advice, we hope that they make a mistake and we are there to catch them. Yes, we want actual offenders to make mistakes so that we have good enough evidence to take them to court because, well, this person deserves that. So thank you very much. So are there any questions in the room? Well, a very quick comment. remember that we have room 19. Okay. What has happened? All right. So room 19, they will be sending in their questions. So there is a question over there. So be brief, please. So thank you very much for your work. I think your work is a very difficult one. So I'd like to thank you for your work, and it is very complicated to do what you do considering the little resources. So before you mention an example of a friend of yours who just logs on to the Wi-Fi network of a hospital, I understand that your relationship with that person may be a bit complicated. Why didn't you report that person? Because that was a crime. No, he did not commit any crime. The only thing that he did was just to change the URL, and he found that it was open, and he mentioned that to us. He reported it to us. In many places, there are no security measures in place whatsoever. And he reported that to us, and so that was it. So please stand up when you make your question. Two questions, short ones. Is there a cooperation between agencies? And out of curiosity, how many people from the Spanish government are working in cybersecurity, not only from your force, but also from the army, and then from the military? And Nico also mentioned that one of the advantages of cyber armies is that they may deny their existence or their attacks. And also, Raul also mentioned, to what extent can you counter-attack to make prevention? Is that an IT crime? So my question is, any of the law enforcement agencies are counter-attacking to prevent any attacks, or you always do that through a legal channel? So, for instance, to give you an example, so for instance, if you find a server with pedophilic images, do you always follow the channel, you report it through a court, and that is stopped after 6 months, or you launch a preventative attack just to crash the server and to stop it? Thank you. Well, second question is no. So you cannot commit a crime to investigate a crime. We are not offenders. We do not steal information. We don't attack anything. Even if it is very painful, we just don't do it. So I cannot commit a crime. So I'm not going to do what I am after. I would love to. I would love to crash the server, but I cannot do it. We don't do it. We talk to the provider. We close it down. If we cannot find the provider, we cannot do anything. So some things escape from us. Well, and I don't know, but sometimes news that about invoices, but the government hiring cybercrimers to attack the Catalonian authorities. What can you tell me about that? Is that related to what you said at all? No, we don't do that. We investigate crimes, and we render service we deliver to citizens. So I would like to take this opportunity to tell you how to make a differentiation. So we are talking about cyber espionage, cyber crime, cyber everything. Cyber espionage has been there since the Romans. So allied countries have spied on each other, always. So same as letters before, now email, and now espionage is done through technologies. So espionage has always been there. Are we allies? No, well, we are just countries with common interest. Whether we are allies or not, well, we have to see that. And the war, by definition, is absence of norms. If now you want to wage a war with IT tools and Trojans and etc., well, the same as you launch bombs, you can launch a bomb through denial of service. So different motivations and different people accountable for that. So there is a recurrent discussion. Well, if Spain is attacked, receives a cyber attack, can we respond in a legitimate manner? No, because we don't know who is attacking us. Perhaps you will be attacking France and you just don't know. Perhaps the people are just in France. If you want to make it legit, if you want to make it legal, you just don't want to create a battleground. The cybercrime that we investigate, which has an impact on society, and then cyber espionage. It is completely beyond these geostrategic issues, geo-interest, and then the cyber war, which is just a continuation of politics through a different channel, through different means. We should not mix those three things. May I say something? I think I've said it several times loud and clear. Why do I trust you? Because you have proven that we can trust you. So I know very many difficult cases, and you have stood up for someone, and then that person did not ended up in jail, and that was thanks to you. Is that applicable to all the layers of law enforcement agencies, and as well as the defense? Can we trust all the layers? How would you? What would you do to build that trust? I trust Cesar because I know him. I also trust the people I work with. I've worked with you. I know that I can trust you. Shall I trust those that I didn't work with? How can they build that trust? How are they going to trust others? So what is your definition of trust? Why should you trust? Well, case OH. Well, it is a mutual thing. There came a time, and as I said, well, we couldn't do this alone. So it was time for us to break barriers and then to find collaborations. The first time I went to Rooted, it was a bit controversial. And then I decided to go there and say, here we are. If you need us, come to us. We will discuss it. And I mentioned that day. It is a mutual thing. It is not you trusting us, but it is us trusting you, and that should be mutual. So at the end of the day, one of the two parties have to take the first step. We decided to do it ourselves and say, okay, let us trust the community. And well, here we are, a few years down the road. What do the others? What can the others do? Well, they may come close to the community, trust them, and then they can prove that they can also be trusted. So I believe that no one can say, well, I've been betrayed. Well, perhaps I'm not giving you the response that you want me to give, but I will not be betraying you. You just tell me what is happening, and we'll see whether we can find a way to resolve it. But the first step is someone saying, okay, I'm going to trust the community, come over here, Rooted, go to the bar, to the party. So that letting people, addressing them. And then if there is, then building trust is mutual. It's not you trusting me or me trusting you.
We've seen cases where people have made a mess and have realized that they were going to be caught and then decided to collaborate. If someone wants to try that, go ahead. But if they make a mistake, lying to us, they better be ready. There's something I would like to say. Because of professional reasons, we have traveled throughout the world, and it's quite funny. When you travel somewhere abroad, and I say it from the point of view of policing, it sometimes happens that a policeman in another country stops you, and the first thing you need to do is to bring out your wallet. And there are some countries which are not that far away where you do that. However, in Spain, when a civil guard stops us on the road when we're driving, we don't have the feeling that we have to take out the wallet and pay them. So I think that individual behaviors that generate trust talking about the police and the armed forces, well, I don't think we have that much of a corruption level. I think we are quite reasonable, professionally speaking. I think we can be trusted when reporting a crime. Then you have to deal with individuals, of course, and the mileage varies. But it's been many years of service. This group has been doing things for citizens for many years, and we've made mistakes, of course. But the image we convey, I believe, is one of professionalism, of respect towards our citizens, and I think it remains there. That's the message we convey consistently. I'm not making more money if I treat people better. I have to disagree with that. You are subject to a very specific type of treatment as a police force, and that this everyone knows about my ideology. I don't like politicians, and everyone knows about that. And politicians usually give orders that have nothing to do with justice. There are examples that I will not mention, okay? But I don't think this has to do only with your good work from institutions. Institutions must be there in the first line of fire, because you have politicians behind the scenes as well. It can be anything. It can be the FBI, it can be anyone. So I have to disagree. Well, in this case, we have a clear duty, which is part of our DNA, political independence. I have never got political instructions to do things otherwise. And in his position, and when I was in his position as well, we were not replaced when the politicians were changed. In other countries, the head of a unit in the police force is always replaced whenever politicians are changed. That is not our case. We are now having, if we now have a new Director General from the Socialist Party, I would remain in my position. If someone else came along from the Popular Party, it would be the same thing. But we pride ourselves. We pride ourselves because of that independence. We have a technical duty, not a political one. It is a technical type of work. So let me say it once again. The perception of citizens is that we are there, and regardless of who is in office in government, we are here to protect the interests of our citizens, and that's what we do, regardless of who is in government. And that is my duty, that's my obligation. Difficult to understand in other countries, in other environments, but I have to tell you, that's part of our DNA. Any more questions? To be honest, I have to say that in other areas, this has been proven over and over again. You investigate whoever is in government. Second row, could you raise your hand? Does it work? Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for all the information that you have shared as professionals in the security forces. I think this is extremely useful. My question relates to the first presentation earlier today, delivered by Mikko Hipponen. He said that he felt a bit frustrated by the fact that the security forces used offensive tools in the work. Obviously, you are fighting against cyber terrorists and really hateful crimes, but he felt a little bit frustrated about the lack of transparency. He said that he would like to see clearer statistics about the number of computers that have been infected, how many people are guilty of certain crimes. But we really need more transparency, more clear statistics. If we take a look at the archives from the hacking team, we know about the police forces buying Trojans. So, as far as you can tell, and obviously bearing in mind your professional secrecy, can you tell us about the type of tools you use. Oh, let me go back to the hacking team. We've seen the source code for the hacking team. There were two functions. One said place evidence for pedophilia, and another one for Islamic terrorism. Plant evidence, we meant. Well, we've used tools. In child pornography, I'm trying to remember. I'm losing my own drift. In child pornography, we had to intercept networks using tools, obviously with the necessary legal authorization. We got approval from the judge because the crime we were investigating was serious enough, and that justified the use of wiring a cyber cafe. I remember towards the year 2000 when the piece of software was configured to detect the evidence that we had for the user that was visiting the cyber cafe. The criminal was using a cyber cafe for their felonies in child pornography. So it was perfectly justified to use a tool. And then there are technical units that are in charge of doing things. We are entitled by law. We are entitled to do remote access, by the way. We need to have special units that are allowed to test whatever is available in the market for tools that could be useful in an investigation. As Cesar said before, we are here to talk about cybercrime. It is always the judge that will know about it. It is always the judge that will tell us to what extent. I want you to come every day with the logs for that cyber cafe so that I can see for myself that the measures I have adopted are proportional and justifiable in terms of the severity of this crime, and you're not getting off bounds, so to say. There are tools out there. We're entitled legally to use those tools under certain circumstances, but you have to believe me that we always have a legal authorization. There is always a judge allowing us to do what we do. There was another question around here. Well, first of all, thank you very much for that public service that you deliver. The truth is, I'm a guest. I'm not an expert in cybersecurity. I'm not an IT expert. And as such, I would like to pose three more generic questions. Comments have been made about investigating crime. Do you do anything in terms of crime prevention? That's question number one. Then there were some comments made on the fact that cybercrime has nothing to do with geography. It happens everywhere. Cybercrime doesn't really happen in Madrid or elsewhere in Spain. So does it make sense to have a unit as part of the Civil Guard or a unit as part of the National Police? Two or more police units in charge of these things? Let me give you an answer for part of that question. Crime prevention. Since I'm in charge of the department now, and thanks to the history, to the track record, to Juan Salom, to Cesar, to Oscar, we are now, after all this time, an investigation unit which has its own social network profile, social media profiles. Through our social media profiles, we launch prevention campaigns. To give you an example, through the Colabora or Collaborate portal, we are getting something like 100 messages every day. We try to respond to absolutely everyone and give everyone the most adequate answer. And then we use our social media profiles to launch prevention campaigns when a major event is happening in the summer, or when some topic becomes relevant enough, people going on holidays and leaving their houses unattended, the main residences. Well, we try to give people clear messages about what to do to keep their houses safe. We collaborate with our colleagues over in the National Police Force So this is what we try and do. This is what we have been doing for many years in crime prevention. We invest our time, our effort, and our resources. The second question, well, I'll leave the others to respond. In general, the police model we have in place in Spain is not unique. In fact, most of the countries in our neighborhood have more than one police force with different scopes. I see more things in favor than against such a model. I think we have improved significantly in terms of the tools we have to coordinate with each other. Obviously, we have our own idiosyncrasy, our own rationale, our own way to do things. And to have healthy competition is a good thing for citizens. Why not? At the end of the day, you have a permanent quest on both sides of the equation. The National Police Force and the Civil Guard are in a quest to be as professional as possible because we have a competitor. Any country with a high index, with a high rate of police forces has more than one police force. Only the Nordics have only one police force. But it seems that we have no more questions, so allow me to ask a question myself. Do you have a really difficult example that you can mention? No details. For example, the problems with Wi-Fi interception, something you could mention without details? These things cannot be mentioned. One of the strangest things I ever heard was this guy running a server with a website. His server was in a fake ceiling, and it was hid behind a panel. There was a fake ceiling, but it was hidden with more fake ceiling inside. So it took us quite a while. We knew it was there, but it took us quite a while. It was like watching a film. Pull the cable, all the way to the ceiling until the router came down. It fell. About other things, we're pulling the cable and then realize that there's no router in place. The connection comes from this place, but there's no router connected to that cable. So let's call the operator to find out what the hell's going on. We can tell you in the bar, okay? Well, Roman, this is the end of the debate. If we let them enough time, I think they would tell us more anecdotes. Oh, there's more questions from the floor. Right, but quickly, please. There was something from the back. Based on your experience, how is your communication with other police forces on an international scale to deal with incidents related to using Tor networks or crime involving more than one country? Well, perhaps my first comment would be about 1996, when we started creating this group, and the first news came to Spain. In that sense, we were invited by Interpol. The headquarters are in Lyon, for a European task force. We were collaborating there on a regular basis to share best practices. In fact, we developed an investigation manual for that type of crime. At an international level, a network was created quite quickly, actually, that would make things easier. Even a 24/7 type of network, where you can be contacted to give colleagues support in any other country. That was the start of that international collaboration, where all police forces in the world got together to a certain extent, and then Juan and myself were invited to a couple of conferences, including one led by the FBI in New York and New Orleans. And we learned. We learned from what others did, and others learned from what we did. Because this is not just the Russians or the Americans that know best. Sometimes you get to know about the modus operandi, and they knock on your door to find out about what is happening and how you're reacting to it, how you're handling it. We've seen many academics getting in touch and leveraging the knowledge that we have gathered. Perhaps you know about more advanced ways of collaboration, but in the world of policing, well, this is how we get on with each other. Perhaps in Europe, Europol and the other joint forces have made it much easier, and then we have the bilateral agreements. This is based on coffee and dinner together with your colleagues. Otherwise, things are much more conventional and probably much slower. But in our neighborhood, collaboration could be better in some cases, but it's quite reasonable in general. Well, I think that now, with Roman's permission, we will call it a day. We'll close the debate right now. And by the way, I mean, you have 20 years of history, and you haven't celebrated. Are you waiting to turn 25 years old? Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you. Yesterday, during the dinner we had, Juan Antonio was asking. And we decided that it would be quite convenient for them to be here in their uniforms, because the civil guards, they're proud of being civil guards. You know them, and they're great people and great professionals. So thank you very much indeed, and a round of applause for them. Roman, it's all yours. Well, thank you very much indeed. Please try to be punctual tomorrow. Take a look at Cody to cast your vote. You have the codes there, and really, from me, thank you very much for your effort.